Hi guys, Patrick here from BFS Wargaming. So the big FAQ2 has been dropped. It's not as big as I thought it was going to be. There's no points changes. There's a few rule changes. One of the ones that stood out for me right off the bat was the change to the fly keyword, also for flip belts and wraith form. So this means basically they changed it so the ability only affects the movement phase. So that means that one where people were deep striking in and then getting like a 2-inch charge because they could ignore terrain, you can't do that anymore. And the other thing that is before, where you could charge over a screen, like some troops, you could just charge over them and maybe then get into a character. You won't be able to do that anymore because it says you can only ignore troops and terrain, or infantry and terrain, in the movement phase. So in the charge phase, you still have to account for that terrain. You have to go and measure upwards, and for troops you can't just go over them. You have to charge the closest unit. So that's quite interesting. It's quite a big rule change there, especially if you have the fly keyword. Like for instance, if you've got some Custodes bikes, or if you've got some Harlequins with flip belts, you can't just hop over them infantry on a charge. You can still move over them and then charge, but if your movement takes you up to like just out of an inch, you can't then charge over them into a character that's behind them. So that's pretty big, I think. So I've got just got the computer here, so I'll go through a few things. So Battle Brothers rule has now been made a rule instead of beta. Psychic Focus, which is the one where your smite goes up and keeps going up each time you use it. And apart from if you're a Grey Knight or a Thousand Sun, sorry. And then you have the targeting characters rule, which is the same. So you can't target characters even if the closest enemy unit is not visible. You still can't target the character if it's under 10 wounds. So now we're going to go into the tactical reserves. So the max play rule or beta rule for this before was that you could not deep strike on turn 1 unless it was in your own deployment zone. So if you had anything in reserves, in the teleportarium, anything like that, it could only come in at turn 2. It could come in turn 1, but only in your deployment zone. So now nothing can come in on turn 1. So you can't bring it in. This affects the Gene Stealer cults as well. So they used to be an exception to the rule in the other beta rule for Gene Stealer cults. They've taken that out, but they have said that the Gene Stealer cults codex is in development and they've taken this into account. So this is going to be pretty interesting to see what they're going to do. It. So, you know, where people were using the Screaming Jet stratagem for the Drukhari, putting things up and then bringing them in the deployment zone and then shooting, they can't do that anymore unless they bring them in turn 2. Which I think makes things pretty fair, because that way there was some armies that could take advantage of it, such as the Drukhari, and there was a lot of armies that it really hindered, like the Blood Angels, the Grey Knights, which... why would they want to deploy their assault armies in the deployment zone? It just wouldn't really benefit them. So yeah, I think that's... I was expecting to be a twist in it. That stayed as a beta rule because they said they've changed it quite a bit. So they're keeping that as a beta rule. And then we've got some big changes to a lot of those infiltrate stratagems. So instead of being able to infiltrate anywhere up to 9 inches away from the opponent and out of the deployment zone, you can now just move 9 inches, but still keeping 9 inches away from your opponent. So you can move up to 9 inches. This is a pretty big nerf. It's I think gonna mess a few people's sort of stratagem or strategies up when they're playing if they use those, like such as Styges 8 and Raven Guard, Alpha Legion, those types of units. Sorry, armies. So the new beta match play rules for there's a new stratagem called Prepared Positions. So this is quite cool. So if you roll off and you end up going second, what you can do is you can play this stratagem before the first turn, and it's 2 command points. And basically what it does is all the models in your army, unless they are Titanic, get a +1 to their cover save. So, or basically get a save as if they're cover, so you get +1 to their armor save. So this means unless they're already in cover, then they won't get it. So if you're already in terrain, you're not going to get like 2+ to your armor save. So it's pretty cool. It's not going to affect invulnerable saves, but it's pretty cool. It makes it so you're less likely to lose half of your army on the first turn to a gunline army. So I think it's a good thing. It's 2 command points, like, but I think it will be worth it if you haven't got much cover. If there's not much terrain on the board, I think it's a good stratagem, and I think it's quite cool. It's a good thing they've put in, especially when they haven't really, you know, because of the rule you can't deep strike. I think they needed to do something. I'm not sure if this is going to be enough, but we'll see. Also, you've got to remember that Chapter Approved is coming out in only a couple of months. So I think it's November or December, I think. And that's coming out, and so there's no point changes in this. So all the point changes is going to be in Chapter Approved. I'm sure there'll be other things changed. This is definitely, I thought that this big FAQ was going to be bigger than it has been, but it hasn't addressed too much of the soup stuff, but we'll go into that now. So there's a new beta rule called Tactical Restraint for match play. So basically what this is going to do is, with your Warlord traits, relics that farm command points, that you can get command points on a 5+ or a 6+. What happens now is you can only get 1 back per battle round. So that means if you're doing 5 battle rounds, that's a maximum of 5 CP you're going to get back. I mean, I would have thought it'd be 1 per player turn. 1 per battle round seems quite harsh. It then sort of makes them Warlord traits and relics definitely not as good. But we'll see what happens with that. You know, you can't really tell until you've played it, and that's why it's a beta rule. So we'll play it, we'll see what it's like, and then we can give our feedback on that. Also, what's happened is there's a lot of stratagems that they feel that are more effective than they thought they would be. So they've put them up and made them more expensive in command points. For instance, the Oathbreaker Guidance System, which was 2 command points, where you could fire your missile at a character, even and didn't need line of sight. This has now gone up 1 command point. It's happened to 3 Knight stratagems. The Drukhari Agents of Vex stratagems got up to 4 CP, which I think is a good thing. To be honest, I think it should be only allowed to be used once per battle. Well, in my own personal opinion, I don't think it should be even a stratagem, but I think it should be once per battle. I think 4 CP is good because it goes off on a 2+, so you're pretty much always going to get it to go off. And then you could command point that if you wanted anyway. And then that's about it for the main things that have happened. You've got some other things. For instance, the Necrons have the Monolith and the Night Scythe. There has been changed with the invasion beams, so it's not been changed, it's just been reinforced. Basically, it's saying that you're coming out of a transport the same as you would a Rhino. You set up 3 inches, and you've got to be more than 1 inch away from an enemy model, and you can then move like it is your movement phase, so, and shoot and everything else. So I think some people were confused and thought that it acted as a deep strike, so you couldn't move afterwards. But yeah, it was how I was playing it anyway, and how I thought the rule was intended. It made sense that it was a transport, so it's just that the transport works in a slightly different manner. Yeah, so I think that's all pretty good. I think Chapter Approved is going to bring maybe have a bigger impact on the game overall. I think it's going to be the points changes is going to be a bigger impact. So I think, you know, you could end up, your overall army could end up being 150 points more expensive, or it could end up being 100 points cheaper, you know, which is, I think, huge. It's big. I wonder if they'll make any changes to any data sheets. I would like to see this. I'm not sure if they'll do it, but I would really like to see this. Just to bring some of the weaker units that people aren't using in line. I don't think they were going to do it all in one chapter approved. It would be nice to see them pick a couple of units from each codex though, and change that. I think that would be pretty cool. So there's a few things that have changed in the main rule book, some rewording of things, but nothing massive. To be honest, I looked through each faction, and each faction, the errata and what's been changed. And there's not, you know, it's a lot of stuff like the monoliths. There's slight things that have changed. It's more rewording things and making things more clearer. But yeah, overall, I think it's an okay FAQ. It's not really massively impactful. I think they didn't address the soup issues much, really, other than making CP more expensive and farming harder to get back. I don't think that's going to change too much a lot of these armies, but we'll see. We'll see if chapter approved brings anything more. I mean, maybe chapter approved there'll be bigger changes, because by then I should imagine all of the codexes will be out, apart from the Sisters of Battle. But all the current armies, apart from Sisters of Battle's codex, will be out. As we know, that's coming next year, and there's going to be a beta codex in chapter approved. So I think that's where you're going to see points changes. You're going to see some of the maybe bigger changes, and then I'm not sure if there'll be any big rule changes or anything like that in there. Maybe there'll be an update with FAQs and errata at the same time. So we just really got to see how that all works. But yeah, these are my general thoughts on the FAQ. I think it was all right. I think there's still a lot over all of the codexes in general that needs to be addressed. The soup issue still needs to be addressed, because there's too many ways you can get around it. Interestingly, they did FAQ the Demon Princes about the are the Chaos Demon, the Nurgle Demon, and the Tzeentch Demon Chaos data sheets different for the rule of 3? And they said, yeah, they are different. So you can take 9 Demon Princes, which apparently they're happy with. So there you go. But yeah, so there's a few things in there like that they've sort of FAQ'd and just said one way or another. But I think there's a lot more changes to come. So let's keep our eyes out for December. I think December's going to be, or November, I can't remember when the chapter approved, end of the year. That's where the big changes are going to be. And yeah, so we'll probably do another video on that. But thanks for watching another Warhammer Chatter. Please like and subscribe, and keep up to date with all of our battle reports and Warhammer Chatters. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.